A fragile Europe. Europe appeared politically stable at the end of the 18th century. Monarchies ruled most of the continent, many of them having existed for generations or even centuries. Borders had changed little for decades, and political authority remained firmly concentrated in royal families and hereditary elites. But this stability was already failing, and those in power had the most to lose from admitting it. For most people living at the time, monarchy felt permanent. Kings and queens had survived wars, revolts, and economic crises before. Their rule seemed woven into everyday life, reinforced by religion, tradition, and law. The idea that Europe could be governed in a fundamentally different way felt unrealistic, even reckless. Beneath the surface, however, European societies were deeply unequal. Political participation was restricted to small ruling classes. The majority of the population had no real influence over laws, taxation, or foreign policy, even though they paid for those decisions through labor, taxes, and military service. Wealth and land were inherited, locking power into narrow social groups. Social mobility existed mostly in theory. For most people, birth determined opportunity. Population growth intensified pressure on food supplies and employment. Cities expanded faster than infrastructure could support them. Poverty became more visible, harder to explain away. This system survived not because people believed in it, but because they feared what might replace it. Order, even unjust order, felt safer than uncertainty. Europe still looked calm, but the system holding it together was already weakening. Revolution breaks. Order that weakness exploded in 1789. The French Revolution did not simply remove a king. It attacked the logic of inherited power itself. Feudal privileges were abolished. Legal equality was proclaimed. Authority shifted away from birthright toward representation, at least in principle. The revolution also changed expectations. Ordinary people were no longer just subjects. They were told they were citizens. That idea alone was destabilizing. For Europe's rulers, this was not a distant crisis. It was a warning. If monarchy could fall in France, it could fall anywhere. Fear spread quickly. Revolutionary France was dangerous not only because of its armies, but because of its ideas. French soldiers carried weapons, and the belief that kings were not inevitable. Inside France, revolution produced instability alongside reform. Governments collapsed in rapid succession. Violence escalated. Economic disruption weakened the state. Radical factions fought each other as much as foreign enemies. Yet one decision changed everything. Aristocratic privilege inside the military was dismantled. Command positions were open to men based on competence rather than birth. Talent replaced lineage. That choice would soon reshape Europe and make the coming wars far more dangerous. Napoleon rises. Napoleon Bonaparte was a product of this transformation. Born in 1769 on Corsica, he came from outside Europe's ruling elite. His rise depended on education, discipline, and performance. As an artillery officer, he developed a sharp understanding of logistics, coordination, and concentrated firepower. During the Revolutionary Wars, Napoleon stood out because he acted faster than others. He ignored convention, exploited hesitation, and forced outcomes. His victories were systematic, not accidental. France, meanwhile, was exhausted. Years of revolution and instability had weakened the state. Many feared collapse, foreign invasion, or renewed chaos. In 1799, Napoleon seized power in a coup. He did not present himself as a tyrant, but as a stabilizer. He promised order without undoing revolutionary reforms. Many accepted this trade, believing stability mattered more than political purity. In 1804, he crowned himself Emperor of the French. France had removed a king, only to concentrate power in a single ruler again. Europe now faced a state that mixed revolutionary legitimacy with imperial ambition. Europe at war. Europe responded with coalitions. Austria, Prussia, Britain, Russia, and others repeatedly allied against Napoleon. On paper, these coalitions looked stronger. In reality, they were slow, divided, and poorly coordinated. Napoleon exploited this relentlessly. He moved faster than his enemies could react, forcing decisive battles before alliances fully mobilized. Speed became strategy. French victories reshaped Europe's map. States disappeared. Borders were redrawn. Entire regions were reorganized into satellite kingdoms loyal to France. Napoleon's wars also changed how civilians experienced conflict. Wars were no longer limited affairs fought by professional armies. Entire societies were mobilized, taxes increased, resources were seized. Young men were pulled from farms and workshops and sent to distant battlefields. Every campaign made the state stronger in one sense and more fragile in another. Each victory solved one problem and created a larger one. War stopped being temporary. Treaties became pauses rather than endings. Alliances shifted constantly as states struggled to survive. By the early 19th century, Europe was no longer trying to avoid war. It was adapting to living inside it, a new way to fight. Napoleon's dominance was not based on numbers alone. He changed how war worked. Traditional armies were rigid and hierarchical. Decision-making was slow. Initiative was discouraged. Rank mattered more than effectiveness. Napoleon replaced this with speed and flexibility. His armies were divided into independent corps, capable of operating separately while remaining part of a unified strategy. Officers were expected to act, not wait. Promotion depended largely on performance. Soldiers believed success could change their lives. Discipline tightened. Morale increased. Soldiers began to see themselves not as expendable tools of aristocrats, but as citizens in uniform. That belief strengthened loyalty and endurance, but it also raised expectations. Victory became necessary to maintain discipline. The system worked as long as momentum continued, but it had a flaw. It required constant victory to survive. Empire under strain. By the early 1800s, Napoleon controlled or influenced most of continental Europe. On maps, the empire looked solid. In reality, loyalty was thin. Occupation produced obedience, not acceptance. Resistance simmered beneath the surface. Governing the empire grew increasingly difficult. Laws, taxes, and administrative reforms were imposed from Paris, often clashing with local customs. While some reforms improved efficiency, others bred resentment. Nationalism began to rise in response. In places like Spain and parts of Germany, resistance movements formed. Guerrilla warfare drained French resources and morale. These conflicts did not produce decisive battles, but they steadily exhausted the empire. Britain remained defiant. Unable to defeat it at sea, Napoleon turned to economic warfare. The continental system aimed to isolate Britain by cutting off trade across Europe. Instead, it destabilized the continent. European economies relied on commerce. Shortages spread, prices rose, smuggling flourished, enforcement weakened. Resentment grew among allies forced to sacrifice their own prosperity. The policy designed to weaken Britain began weakening Napoleon instead. Russia, 1812. By 1812, Napoleon faced a decision that could not be reversed. Russia's refusal to fully enforce the continental system challenged French authority. If defiance went unanswered, others would follow. Napoleon chose invasion. The army he assembled was the largest Europe had ever seen, drawn from across the empire. Managing it across vast distances exposed severe logistical limits. Roads were poor, supplies unreliable, coordination strained by language and command differences. Russian commanders avoided decisive battle, retreating while destroying resources. French forces advanced deeper into hostile territory with nothing to sustain them. When Napoleon reached Moscow, the city offered no victory. It was largely abandoned and soon consumed by fire. Winter arrived. Cold, hunger, disease, and exhaustion destroyed the army. Discipline collapsed. Units disintegrated. The retreat from Russia shattered Napoleon's image of invincibility. For the first time, he was reacting instead of dictating events. Europe knew he could be beaten. Collapse and legacy. After Russia, resistance hardened. Former allies defected. New coalitions formed. In 1813, Napoleon suffered a decisive defeat at Leipzig, the largest battle Europe had ever seen. His grip on the continent collapsed. In 1814, enemy armies entered Paris. Napoleon abdicated and was exiled to Elba. Europe tried to move on. Then he returned. In 1815, Napoleon escaped Elba and regained power for 100 days. Soldiers sent to stop him joined his cause. The response from Europe was immediate. A final coalition assembled. The confrontation came at Waterloo. Delays, miscommunication, and the arrival of Prussian forces ended Napoleon's rule for good. This time, there would be no escape. Napoleon was exiled to St. Helena, a remote island in the South Atlantic. There, isolated and closely guarded, he lived until his death in 1821. His empire collapsed, but its effects did not. Centralized administration, mass conscription, standardized law, and national warfare endured. Napoleon fell, but the system he left behind made another crisis only a matter of time.